Good morning, everyone. This is Jacob Palmer from Palmer Electrical. Thanks for tuning back into the Palmer Electrical YouTube channel. We just stopped by the supply house here to pick up some materials for today's job. We've got an interesting one today. We're pulling two new 120 volt circuits for just dedicated receptacles in the crawl space for a new sump pump and a dehumidifier customers having installed. They're having their crawl space totally encapsulated, and those two pieces of equipment will help keep the crawl space dry and free of mold and pests and all that good stuff. Everybody loves an encapsulated crawl space, and I'm happy to contribute. I spoke with the homeowner. They were okay with me filming the job, so I'm taking you right along with me. As always, if you have questions about what you see me doing in the video, be sure to leave them in the comments. Everybody does stuff just a little bit differently, so I'd love to hear how you do your work, where you live, what kind of materials you might have used. Be sure to leave all that in the comments. I love hearing about it. But with that said, we gotta get rolling. We got a little drive to the customer's house and we'll get started. We'll see you there. All right, we have arrived. Ready to get started. I'm gonna take you over here to the work area and show you a little bit about what the plan is. So this garage wall here lines up with the crawl space right here below. Comes up to somewhere in here on the wall. What we're going to do is we've got a pretty full panel here, but we've identified two circuits that are no longer in use. One here is this single pole 20 amp breaker. It was mislabeled. It says here it was for irrigation. That's not true. We identified this breaker here as serving this dedicated receptacle here in the garage, which used to be used for a central vacuum system in the home, which is no longer present. So what we're going to do is we're going to repurpose this circuit. It's a 20 amp circuit with 12 gauge wire. And also this single pole 20 amp GFI breaker here, we're going to swap this out for a regular one and then use this spot. This serves the jacuzzi, which also no longer gets used. It's planning to be removed. This panel is pretty full. We discussed upgrades and sub panel and things like that with the customer. They opted not to move forward with any of those upgrades for now, but we identified these two circuits here as being available for use, so that's what we're going to do. We need to get one new wire out of this panel down into the crawl space and over, and we need to get the wire going to this receptacle down into the crawl space so that we can bring both of them to a 2-gang box somewhere in this section here that's going to hold two faceless GFIs. The faceless GFI does the same job as these regular GFIs here, but it has no receptacles built into the device. So nothing can be plugged in here, but it has the connections on the back and it's a GFCI. Let's get some tools out. We'll get my table set up in here and we'll get started. Oh, a little messy from working last week, but I picked up a few items from the supply house for this job here. I picked up some of these here. This is what we're going to put in the crawl space. Are these single yoke receptacles here. I like to call these single serve receptacles. We're putting in 2 of these, and they're going to be protected by these faceless GFIs. I like to call them faceless GFIs. The box here is labeled dead front GFCI, which makes sense here. And we're putting 2 of these in a 2-gang box, and we're going to label them for what equipment they serve. Get the table set up. There we go. We'll get the tool crate. We're going to need the drill with a battery. One of my favorite tools. There's that. Get the vacuum. Even in the garage, it's important to make sure that your dust and crumbs are gone. Nobody likes to see that. All right, we've got one of these white plastic access panels. I'm going to install this below the panel here so that I can easily route my wire up, and then this provides some nice trim. We've got 2 single gang nail-on boxes for our receptacles in the crawl space. And then I'm going to use one of these 2-gang cut-in boxes to go in the wall here for the GFCI devices. But step one, let's get this panel cover taken off. I'll show you what the inside looks like. As soon as you get your panel cover off, always thread your screws back into these holes here. I can't tell you how many panels I've come across at my customers' homes that are just barely being held on with 1 or 2 screws. All right, here's what we're working with inside of the panel. As you see, pretty full. We could already tell that before we opened it, but yeah, it's pretty slammed full. Looks like we've got a few circuits here already that have been repurposed or unused or something like that. And I noticed we've got one wire here in the bottom that doesn't have a knockout. What we're going to do is we're going to use that opening also and add a connector for our wire, and that'll correct that as well. But here's the breaker here that goes down over to that dedicated receptacle, and then here's our 20 amp GFI breaker that goes up to the old jacuzzi. And then the first thing I'm going to do is my drywall cutting. I'm just going to get that out of the way. We need to cut an 8x8 inch hole here, and then we need to cut a hole for this 2-gang cut-in box somewhere in here. These are pretty cool because the label that comes with the panel is 8x8. You can see here, use this label as an 8x8 template, so you can just put this on the wall, trace and cut. Pretty handy little feature there. And then always make sure that the access panel that you install is centered up with the panel. Bring that center line down. Right. There's the middle of it. Set up a horizontal line here. I'm going to take the template and fold it in half. So now line up the center of our crease and then the horizontal line. There it is. Trace it out. There we go. We're going to cut this out for our access panel. We're going to use the multi-tool for this cut, but it's important to be extremely careful when you do it this way. Obviously, we have lots of important wires going straight down here. So when you do this, don't cut all the way through the sheetrock. I've done this plenty of times, so I have a feel for how deep to go. You don't ever go all the way through the sheetrock. You cut most of the way through it, and then you can usually give it a little bit of a bang with your fist, and it'll break right off. Just going to use a little bit of shock here to get it loose. There we go. There we go. Broke it out. All right, there it is. You can clearly see why it's important not to cut all the way through here. Looks like we lined up perfectly with the bottom of the stud bay here. This will be good access. This is an insulated wall here being shared with the garage and interior living space. So we're going to have to fight through the insulation, but that's usually not too difficult. That's usually doable. And we're going to go ahead and get our 2-gang cut-in box positioned. I'm just using my flashlight here to identify the studs. You can see where the screw holes are poking out through the wall. I'd like to have a stud bay to myself where I'm not fighting with these other receptacles, so I can see that this receptacle is between this stud and this stud here. This receptacle I can see is on the other side of this stud, so we're going to put it right here in between here. We're going to reference off of, I think, this existing box here. We're going to do it at the same height as this box here. So I'm just going to line mine up with the bottom of the box and then make a mark. Looks good right here. And mark it the rest of the way. Like that. Right there. For this smaller one, I'm going to use my jab saw. Another quick tip too is I always like to get my jab saw started on all 4 sides before I cut them all the way out. And the reason for that is if I take my saw and cut all the way here, all the way here, all the way here, and then try to jab in on this side, this whole section of drywall here is loose, and sometimes it can cause it to break. The drywall here won't be as strong as it should be to support that cut-in box. These cut-in boxes are only supported or only support themselves to the drywall. So it's important that the drywall around the box is intact it's not all broken up or loose behind it. Otherwise, it won't be installed properly. You would need additional support or a different type of box. So I get all 4 sides of the square started just to prevent that from breaking. All right, so this is where our 2 gang box is going to be. We have to get this wire here pulled into this box, and then we need to get a new wire from here over, and those would be the line side for our 2 GFCI devices. The load side of these GFCI devices are going to be 2 more wires that go down out to our receptacle locations. And I want to see if I can locate where this wire goes down. First, we're going to take a measurement of how far over that receptacle stud bay is. We'll take a measurement from where the SER goes down into the crawl space, the feeder cable for this panel, because we'll be able to locate right where that is. We're going to measure from that over to where this existing receptacle stud bay starts, which gives us a measurement of about 7 feet and 2 inches, because down in the crawl space it's not going to be exactly matching. Recently I've been trying to be better about wearing masks in attics and crawl spaces. You just never know what's down there. Here's our crawl space entrance. A little bit dirty. It's not the worst crawl space ever, but we have to go all the way to the other end. So let's get started. All right, you can see here where the SCR goes up. So we're going to measure about 7 feet 2 inches over from the edge of this floor joist here. And that should be pretty close to where a 12-2 wire goes up into the stud bay. All right, there's our 7-foot measurement, and then here's a 12-2 that goes up right here. Looks like that's going to be our dedicated circuit right there. We'll get that pulled back and over, but first we're going to drill down through the stud bay. All right, so we got down in the crawl space and we found where the wire goes down into the crawl space. I verified that below here there's no wires or anything, so we'll be good to use a flex bit and drill down into the crawl space, and hopefully we'll be able to get this wire pulled without needing to make an extension. We're going to load up the flex bit. And we're going to make 2 holes down the bottom of this stud bay here to make room for our wires. We're going to leave that down and drill our second. All right, I got both of my holes drilled. I went down in the crawl space and I located my glow rod, so I know we're in the crawl space. And I also tugged on this wire here and it went just a little bit. It's most likely stapled inside of this wall here, but based on what I felt, it might be just loose enough to pull this out without damaging it. We're gonna give it a try, and worst case scenario, if it does damage it, then I can cut it back and make a junction inside the crawl space. I'm also going to get my new wire from here down into the crawl space so that while I'm down there, I can pull this one back, tie it to the glow rod, pull this one over, tie it to the glow rod, and then pull them both up at the same time. Get it aside. And if you take a bucket and put it inside the loop here, it'll keep it from getting twisted over itself, or at least it'll help. So I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna use one of the existing holes here. There's a few of them that look like they have adequate space. We're gonna go ahead and try to push a good amount of it down in there so that it's there when it's ready. This is probably getting bunched up down there, but that'll be all right. Okay, that should be good. And then if I need, I can pull more as I need to. All right, here's our badly bunched up 12-2. And we're gonna need a little bit more than this, so we'll go ahead and pull the extra slack that we have set up for ourselves. Definitely plenty right there. I don't have my stapler with me yet. I'm gonna come down and do all my stapling at once. For now, I'm just gonna get everything pulled to where it needs to be. All right, here's our existing wire here. We'll give it a tug. Oh, all right, came loose. All right, there it goes. Let's inspect it carefully for damage. A couple nicks to the sheathing here. It doesn't look like it went down to the conductor insulation. It didn't even make it through here. That should be fine. We'll strip that back, make sure there's nothing on the rest of this. That's just some surface marking there, just some schmutz it looks like. But everything else here looks intact, so we'll be able to reuse this and send it up with our new wire here. Let's get it attached to the glow rod. I like to get a couple of wraps on these first, then get the glow rod in. Where these steps are, where it comes up and meets the new cable, I like to do a couple extra wraps to makes a little bit of a ramp. Sometimes that'll help you get it pulled up. Good. Tape's almost done. Let's send it up through our hole. We're just leaving it loose like that for now. We'll grab the glow rod through our cut-in box hole and pull them up. All right, we've got the end of our glow rod. Now we should just be able to pull this up. Excellent. There's our wires right there. And I'm going to go ahead and start identifying my wires now. I'm going to use the new circuit that I'm pulling for the dehumidifier, using abbreviation. And these are non-GFCI protected, straight from the panel. These are both home runs. So we're going to mark these line side, sump line for line side on the GFCI. This right here, this is our new wire going for the dehumidifier. So we're going to pull back the slack about like that. Don't pull too hard, just to where it stops. I'm going to put a little bit back so I can easily staple where it needs to be, so it's not overlapping too much. And I'm going to pull this and all the way up, cut it to where it just goes past the panel, and label it. Remember, the new wire that we just pulled is the dehumidifier. Great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to spool out some more of our 12-2 and get our receptacle locations set up down in the crawl space. Like I said, we're doing one in the far corner for the sump pump, and then we're going to do one approximately in the center of the crawl space for the dehumidifier. I'm going to do the dehumidifier first. I'm going to send this wire down through the other hole. All right, we've got it connected to the glow rod. Okay, I've got my home run pulled to my dehumidifier outlet box here. I've determined that this is approximately the center of the crawl space here. It's hard to judge, but I am leaving a big extra loop for the installer just in case he needs to relocate this outlet. That'll be really easy for him to do if that's necessary. But this feels like approximately the middle of the crawl space. My wire's coming in from this side, and what I've done is I've pulled the end of it about 8 feet past the receptacle that way, and I'm going to leave that slack as a loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to staple this side of it here just to hold it in place. So now I have this big loop. I'm going to pull this loop off to the side here and do kind of a zigzag pattern. It's got to be at least every 4.5 feet or so here, and then we go back towards the outlet this way. I'm going to go across to this floor joist here, and now we can take it back and staple it back over here near the outlet. Okay, so now the wire comes in, makes this big loop, comes back over, and it's all stapled and secured, so it'll work just as it is, but it can be moved a good ways if necessary. We're going to do the same thing with the sump pump circuit. I'm going to get that done and catch back up to you whenever I'm at this stage with the sump pump circuit. The dehumidifier load side, because this is going to our receptacle. All right, here you can kind of see pretty well how I did this. So my home run comes over here. I stapled it there. I sent the length that I needed through the box, stapled it there. And then the extra loop, I just stapled it out back here, and a big loop has plenty of slack. Now we need to take our stapler and staple it all the way back to the panel. All right, wire stapled up. Let's get back up, put together our GFCI box. Sump load. And we're going to put a couple of labels on the cover plates. This one's for the dehumidifier. Oh my gosh. Sump. There we go. We'll stick those labels on while I'm up here. And I've got 20 amp receptacles because they're on 20 amp dedicated circuits. Trash that you make down here goes in your pocket. Don't be the guy that leaves trash and debris down here in the crawl space for the next guy to have to crawl around. Got a receptacle. These are really easy to wire up. Neutral on the silver screw, hot on the brass screw. Green screw down here is ground. I like to use an ECX number 2 bit. All right. All right, and there is our receptacle for the little pump. Let's get all our tools out of the crawl space and we'll get everything trimmed out in the garage. Now, we're gonna get our 2-gang box set up with our wires. This is a 32 cubic inch box. This one here has a handy label here. How many number 14s, 12s, and number 10s you can have in the box. It says here you can have 14 number 12 conductors. I have 4 sets of 12-2 wire here. Each of them have 2 current carrying conductors. So that's only 8 of them. And then the grounds only get counted once for the first 4, so looks good. For box fill, I'm going to use my pliers and just loosen up these bottom integral clamps. It's important not to break them because they do serve a function, but I like to loosen it up just to make it a little bit easier, especially since we have 4 cables going in. I'm going to do dehumidifier on the left, sump pump on the right. Alright, and then the sump pump. Good. As you're doing this, make sure you're keeping an eye on the sheathing. Make sure you keep an eye out for damage that you may not have noticed ahead of time. Everything here looks good. Alright, there we go. Pull the slack as you work the box back. Should be able to sit flush in the wall without holding it. No slack or no tension or anything on it. I'm going to tighten down the ears on the cut-in box. I'm going to use my impact, but it's important to set it to low power and go very slow. You'll be able to feel, if you do this enough, when the tension starts, and you got to stop as soon as you feel the tension. You can't over tighten these. And that's it. You could hear the motor slow down just a little bit, and if you watch closely, you can see the box compress in to the wall. That's when you stop. Do the same on the other side. Stop. That's it. Then, take your pliers, get a hold of the edge, do a tug test. Feels solid. Feels good. These won't be receptacles, so this box won't be under any force, but it's important that these get installed securely. All right, a lot of people skip this step in service work, but we're gonna put some fire caulk into these vertical penetrations here that we use. These have some faceless bat insulation in them, which serves the same effect. You're supposed to put fire caulk or some sealant on these bored holes on all your vertical penetrations. Same thing under here. For these holes that we bored over here, we're going to use some fire caulk as well. We're going to do that when we go down to test the function of our GFIs. Good. All right. Have our circuit wiring up here. Let's put all of our grounds together. I'm going to use a crimp sleeve to hold all of our grounds together. Give it a good squeeze. Solid connection, and we'll cut off 2 of these because we only need 2 for our device grounding. None of these wires get splices or junctions in here because each one of these are a line and load pair. They're going to go into our 2 separate GFCIs. We're going to cut these about 6 inches out of the box. Get all our wires stripped. These GFCIs have side wire clamps. It's not a push-in connector, it's a clamping connection there. So we're just going to strip enough to fit underneath that clamp. Line goes on the bottom of this one, and load is on the top of this one, labeled on the back there. I always connect my ground first. And usually I go ground, neutral, neutral, hot, hot. But since this is a GFI, I always do ground, line, and load. So this is the dehumidifier line side. Connects right here. Dehumidifier line side on the hot. Now the dehumidifier load. All right, got that tightened up. Now I'm going to take the wires for this GFI and pre-bend them back in the box, just so I can make sure that plenty of breathing room when my next GFI goes in. The most important thing is to be conscious of where your bare ground wire is getting pushed back into. If it gets pushed back and folded up and comes in contact with these neutral or hots, then that can cause problems. These are 20 amp rated devices. Make sure you pay attention to your amperage. Okay, looks good. Everything's wired up here. I'm going to put some tape around the connections. It's not required, but it's something that I like to do. And it looks like I'm out of tape, but it's exactly enough. Cool, let's go get another roll. This is the tape that I like to use from NSI Industries Warrior Wrap. This is the premium electrical tape. That's at least marked premium. We'll get the sump pump wiring in place. Feels like they have good space. Just gonna take a peek in there, make sure everything looks good. Send them home. Try to get them straight, parallel with the wall as best you can. All right, we've got a connector on the knockout that we're coming in. I'm gonna strip it down the middle carefully. You can have 2 grounds under 1 lug on the ground bar. Pretty much all of these lugs are already taken up with 2 grounds except for 1 that I see here, so that's what I'll use. Push it back through the hole with it. Tighten that down. This 20 amp breaker up here is being removed. The old jacuzzi circuit. We'll get that taken apart. It's already labeled here, which is good. When you cap off wires and just leave them in the panel, you have to make sure that they are wire nutted and capped, but it's also a good practice to label, you know, where it goes, just in case this circuit could be reused one day. We're going to disconnect the neutral pigtail for the old GFI breaker that we're removing. All right, there's the old breaker. Here's our new single pole 20 amp. This is a standard trip breaker. The circuit needs to be GFCI protected, which we're going to do over here. We have our 2 circuit conductors. We're going to hook up neutral first to the open spot that we created. Removed the GFCI breaker onto the neutral bar. Tighten that down. Good. Finally, our hot wire. You can get it up to the breaker. I'm not going to connect it yet, just because we're not done wiring it up over here. I'll print off some labels for this cover plate. And this up top. Here we are. Cover plate screws vertical. There we go. We put a blank cover on this empty box. Our access panel has been installed in the hole that we cut. We're going to use a magic eraser to get rid of this residue. We're done inside the panel here. We're going to put the cover back on the panel and get it relabeled. Pull this out. Line it up carefully. You get the top 2 in there to hold it in place, and then get the other 4. When you're pushing your wires into the trough inside the panel, always make sure that there aren't any wires tucked up in this front corner here next to where the screws are going to go through. I had a case one time where I was tightening this up, and unbeknownst to me, there was a number 6 red wire here going to the customer's Tesla charger. It was one of the hot legs for their EV supply equipment. I sent the screw in, and then it didn't puncture the conductor. It just barely threaded itself through the side of the insulation and caused a short. That was also back when I was during, you know, my apprenticeship. Learn something new every day. Let's print off some labels. Excellent. Right here. The dehumidifier, which should just fit on the dead front here. Yep. Excellent. We'll flip both of these on. They're in the trip position. We're going to reset these. Now, for the last thing, we're going to go down the crawl space and test this GFI here. All right, correct. All right, everything's wired up right. Looks good. Both of them tripped. We'll reset them, and we're good to go. Try to keep the smudges to a minimum. Much better. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching me work. Everybody does stuff differently, and I'd love to hear how you would do this. Make sure you leave comments and explain how you would have done this job, or what you've done differently, or what you like that I did. Let me know if you have any questions about any of the techniques or any of the tools that you saw in today's video. I love answering your comments. This one was just a simple job, pretty straight up. And when I was here for a quote, I knew it would be a good job to film for you guys. I know how much everybody likes seeing videos from the field, so here I am. I'm trying to make more of these. Make sure that you like and you subscribe and you do the bell. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Jacob Palmer from Palmer Electrical. Take care.